Now, I don't like to have presentations. I'd rather just speak to people. I'm a bit of a storyteller. My experience investors in people started probably over 40 years ago, before investors in people even existed. And I was working in the construction industry, and I was 19 years of age. And my boss said to me, "You're experienced enough to pay all the guys working on the site building this road on Friday. But whatever you do, do not pay them before 4 o'clock in the afternoon." And he went off. And starting about 10 o'clock, they were coming to me, John, it's going to be lunchtime. Can you give me a sub?" Now, a sub is to give money in advance, whether it's £5 or £10. And after about 15 of them had come to me, I thought, why don't I just pay them at midday? Get it over with. They're bothering me. So I announced on site, yeah, all come. I will pay you. They all came. I paid them all out. They signed for their wage packets. 2 o'clock came. Nobody on site. They'd all gone to the pub, the bar, and that was it. So I learned a very strong lesson there. But it wasn't the right lesson. I actually learned not to trust people and not to care about them. And so completely opposite to the ethos of investors in people. And my career, I left the construction industry and I went into the telecoms industry. And I became what's known as a corporate seagull. I worked for the president of Comcast, and we had probably 20 franchises all over the world. And my job was to fly in to them, crap all over them, tell them what they were doing wrong, and fly out again. I was one of the most hated people in the company. But I was very, very successful. And unfortunately, this first experience had coloured the way I was. And I was a bit like Scrooge from the Christmas Carol. I didn't care about people. I cared about my success, the success of the company, the profit, the revenue being generated. And I was almost like Attila the Hun. Awful. And then one day I was in Seattle Airport, and my plane was delayed. And I was looking for a book to read. And I found this amazing book that just caught my eye. And it was called The Customer Comes Second. Now, everybody knows the customer is king. The customer comes first. The customer can do no bloody wrong. And I thought, this is very interesting. The customer comes second. So I picked it up and I started to read it. And the more I read it, the more I realised how wrong I was. And it was all about putting people first, by paying people well, giving them the right environment and where to work, giving them a good work-life balance. This was the true way of getting success. So I became like a sponge after that. I'm reading Drucker, I'm looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I'm sucking all this information in. I'm going to seminars with Tom Peters, the famous American, Sir John Harvey Jones, and I suddenly have this new vision. I am Scrooge from Christmas Carol discovering Christmas. And so I tried it in different organisations. I went to work, and first of all you do it with your small team, and I'm sure on a Friday night we would go out for beers, we would really be more sociable. And I started to see the results changing. And unfortunately, you go to so many companies, and you try and put these ideas forward, you try and get the managers, the directors to listen to you, that this is the way to move. And it's very, very difficult to make them change, because they were all like I was in my former life, profit, and revenue. And it wasn't until I created 60K that I had the chance to do whatever I wanted. I was the CEO. My other investors and partners said, we want to create a company where we would work. We would be happy to go to every single day and work. And this is what we did. And we were an immense success. We went from 6 people to 250 in 18 months. And we still managed to foster this family feel. And we were growing 40% year on year. But then we lost our way. We grew too big, too fast. We didn't have the right processes and the right procedures in place. And at this point is when I took on Raya as our HR manager, because I knew we had to think differently. We had to go back, review things, and we needed somebody from the outside to help. And she introduced us to Investors in People, and of course Nevena and her team. It was another revelation in my life, you know, because you think you know it all, and I've read all these books and all of this, and then suddenly you get this outside person influencing you, and her team, and everything they did. And they were in the company, they interviewed the staff, we looked at the framework for Investors and People, and it was just what we wanted. And it wasn't a question of what standard you could achieve. I wanted the gold standard, and Nevena will tell you, the first meeting I want the gold, because I was still very, very ambitious, you know, and that's all that mattered. And I didn't care, we would get the gold no matter what.
And you won the platinum.
Yeah, I want the platinum now, but that I will finish with the platinum. Nevena taught me, it's not about the standard or the level. It's about the people and what you're giving them and what they're going to give back to you. So we embarked on this, and it's an unbelievable experience, because suddenly you see a difference in the way the people are in your company, you know, the way they react to you. It's very difficult, because my managers found it, or some of them found it very, very hard to change. They couldn't really get to grips with this. And in the end, some fall by the wayside, some leave, and some you have to actually remove, because they are actually obstacles to where you're trying to go. And so not only was it very tough to work towards the framework, but when you've got resistance, but Nevena and her team supported us all the way through. She gave us advice, I would share things with her, my problems, my ideas, and she was always there. So when we actually achieved the silver Investor in People, I was over the moon, because we'd gone through this traumatic experience, and we actually achieved this. It wasn't quite the gold, but now they've introduced this new framework. It will be the platinum, and I am determined to get the platinum, no matter what. And we've gone a long, long way to do it. A word of honour. A word of honour. I will do it. I will stand here. I was going to say next year and say, oh, look, I've got the platinum. But maybe it might take a little longer. Because the other thing is, because we're growing so fast, when we had the assessors come around, we were 940 people, and that was August last year. We're now 1,100, and by the end of 2016, we're going to be 1,800 people. And the key about Investors in People is making sure it's embedded in everybody who works for you. And with that rapid growth, it's quite difficult to do. But with Nevena and her team's help, I'm sure we'll manage it. And it made me think of a couple of stories that I know. And one is, you can't be complacent. You can't be complacent at all. And this story is about a little boy in America. He's, I'd rather vodka. It's about a little boy. And he goes into a corner store. And in America, the old corner stores in the town have a public telephone. And he walks up to the shop proprietor and he asks him, could I have 2 quarters, please? I want to use the telephone. And then he drags this carton or box to the telephone, stands on top of it, and he dials this number. And he says, hello, is that Mrs. Jones? And the woman on the other side, yes, it is. He said, I'd like to cut your lawn every week for you, and I will only charge you $5. And Mrs. Jones said, no, it's all right. I have somebody who cuts the lawn already, and I'm very happy. And so the little boy says, well, not only will I cut your lawn, I will weed your flower beds as well for the same $5. And Mrs. Jones says, no, 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 I'm more than happy with the person who's doing it for. She says, oh, Mrs. Jones, I will sweep your paths and I will take your garbage out as well as mow the lawns and do your flower beds. And the woman said, look, I'm dreadfully sorry, I'm very, very happy with the little boy who does it for me. So the boy says, fair enough, thank you very much for your time, and puts the phone down. Anyway, the shopkeeper's been listening to this all the time, and he's amazed at this boy. And he said, look, you're obviously desperate for a job. Come and work in my shop. It's not a problem. And the little boy said, I don't want to. He said, what do you mean you don't want to? I already have a job. And the shopkeeper said, you have a job, but you wanted a job from this woman. I could hear you on the telephone. And he said, no, 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 I already work for this woman. I wanted to measure her satisfaction. And this is the key. You have to continue to measure the satisfaction. You can't be complacent.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.